Hey guys, welcome back. It's Cult of Film, and today we're wrapping up, I guess, what has been sort of Dune mania for the last several episodes, and we're wrapping up with Dune Part Two, which I'm ashamed to say I initially missed when it was in theaters, and I remember seeing all of the hubbub and advertisements of the super high Rotten Tomatoes score. People talking about how no, this is an amazing epic sci-fi, great sci-fi epic, and it still didn't get me in the theater. So I don't know what the hell was wrong with me, but I have since corrected that, and I have watched Dune Part Two three times on Max, where it's streaming. And I have to say, this film is absolutely everything that everyone has hyped it to be. I think to date it has made about $711.8 million dollars off of what I think was initially a $170 million budget. And that makes me feel real good because Dune Part 2 is the epitome of high concept science fiction, of high drama, of an incredibly sweeping epic story. It's all of those things, and it's been a major success. And it seems to only be stacking up the box office, which is great. It's doing really well on streaming and digital rental, which is great. We need more of Villeneuve's Dune. Part two here is just everything we got in part one, but cranked up to 11. The story gets deeper, the characters become even more developed. There's revelations that occur. The character designs, the costume designs, the location designs, everything just is really beautifully done. Absolutely mind blowing. The acting is just superb. There isn't a single weak link in this entire cast, which is great. It's great to see Dune realized in this way. And this is nothing against what had come before. I'm a huge Dune '84 fan, but in the '80s they had really one shot, and so they had to compress a lot of things because they didn't know if they would get a chance to do more films. And back then they didn't because of the reaction. But Dune Parts One and Two, truly flawless, truly beautiful. I love how almost every frame of these films, certainly Dune Part One, but absolutely Dune Part Two, I can hit pause at any time, and the film is so beautifully composed that I have really an amazing, beautiful uh, composition right in front of me. I mean, I could pause anything, anywhere, and it just looks like an incredible, beautiful sci-fi still. That you'd want to put, on your laptop wallpaper. Just absolutely stunning. I like how they didn't steer away from some of the developments with the major characters. What you have in Dune, which is so different from Star Wars or Star Trek, is you don't really get the opportunity in those other franchises to layer characters or even turn characters from what they are established from. And I'm trying really hard not to spoil anything for you guys by not just blurring out because blah 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 blah. I don't want to do that to you guys. I've done a really good job these past four episodes with dropping a lot, or maybe five episodes without dropping many spoilers at all. So I'm working on that. If we ever do something where there are massive spoilers, I will always say at the top. But not a lot of spoilers here. But back to Dune, the development of some of the main characters going from part one to part two is again something that you wouldn't ever see in other large sci-fi franchises. And again, it speaks to the willingness of these creators, these geniuses like Villeneuve and company, to stay true to Herbert's novel, to Herbert's story, and not be afraid to show the shadow on the soul of certain characters, shall we say? Because it's there in the novel, and it's part of what makes the story great and what makes it compelling and layered and interesting. And so, again, they continue to stay true to that in part two. The introduction of characters like we finally see the Emperor, who we did not see in part one. We see the Emperor's daughter, uh, Princess Irulan. Again, it's even some of these characters that don't get a ton of screen time are so beautifully cast. And there are some surprise castings too. There's a few um, cameos in part two that were surprising to me, but were fun nonetheless. I think the only thing I would have maybe have liked to have seen, being such a Dune '84 fanboy, would be to if we could have had Sting show up in some type of a cameo. But yeah, again, doesn't bother me that we didn't. Um, seeing seeing the demise of some characters, the development of established characters, seeing the introduction and establishment of new characters, and just a really satisfying ending. I think if I have a critique of Dune Part One, it's that it kind of just trailed off. It didn't tie off as succinctly as maybe I would have liked. And again, that's that's I don't want to criticize Dune Part One because it's so beautifully done, and I love Villeneuve's work, and I love everything they did in that film. But that's the only note, if I were to give a note. With Dune Part Two, I have no notes. I mean, it's perfect. It is absolutely everything that you've seen, talked about, hyped about. I know there are people that have certain problems with Rotten Tomatoes and their scoring. Um, I thought it was originally 98%. It seems to have dropped to 92%. I don't know who would have had such a problem with this film that they would drop it 6 percentage points. You can't please everyone. But this is up there with not just great science fiction films, just great films in general. One of the things that I keep seeing, especially in these most recent two Dune films, again, because they do such a beautiful job with, Arrakis being the desert planet. I just got, certain like just trace vibes of Lawrence of Arabia. Um, yeah, there is a grand sort of sweeping epic of these older films from the 40s, the 50s, the 60s that Hollywood, how they used to do their grand epics that I really feel when watching this film. Like watching, both of them, one and two. Dune, I'm so interested to see where they're going to go for part three. If it will be called Dune Part Three or if it will be called Dune Messiah. Most of you that are familiar with the books know that once we get beyond sort of those initial main stories, Dune gets pretty weird. So I don't know, I'd be surprised if they kept going. I'd love to see them do that. I'd love to see Bill. I'm sure Villeneuve wants to do other things. He is a huge fan of Dune. It would be great to see him do some of these other more esoteric, more out there stories as the novels roll on. I don't expect him to. I don't think that will happen. Dune Prophecy is I believe, a prequel series that is also going to be dropping on Max soon, which I'm really intrigued to see. I hope they do it as well. They do it justice as Villeneuve has done for these two films. But it'll be interesting to see where it goes because, again, for those of you familiar with Dune, familiar with the Paul Atreides character, him being the is it the Mitzvah Hatteract? Now I'm blanking on the term, but him being the Messiah, the Mahdi, um, things kind of change a bit. This is where the story gets a little dark. I mean, it's nonetheless interesting, but I grew up really for the longest time only being familiar with the '84 movie, and that movie ends on a really high note, a positive sort of messianic note. And it wouldn't be until years and years later that I would delve into some of the early novels and realize I'm like, okay, there's a level of darkness here. It's not just a classic hero's journey, as we see in so many other films and so many other stories. it's a bit different that what Herbert is critiquing uh, after a point is the ability to manipulate prophecy, the dark side of these things, the dark side of power, and we start to get tastes of that in Dune 2. You know, that's not spoiling a whole lot for you. There's so much in this film to enjoy and to see, and it is really worth your time. Um, I kind of watched. I rewatched the last time I rewatched Dune Part One and Two just back to back, and it just it's seamless. It's a lot of time if you have it because again these are long movies, but they're worth it. They're beautiful movies. Um, you know, if you're the types that can watch those long adventure film marathons, Dune Parts One and Two are nothing for you guys, but Dune Part Two, I think it's worthy of an even higher Rotten Tomato score than it gets. Again, I know some people, they either love or hate Rotten Tomatoes. I have found largely them to sort of line up with a lot of my tastes. Not all the time. They give films like Belly from 1998, the Hype Williams film, really low ratings, but I think that's because there's very few reviews. So some of you that hate on Rotten Tomatoes, you know, um, if we don't like the reviews, we can always log in and add our own. So again, be the change you want to see in the world. But check it out, Dune Part Two. Um, I'm frothing at the mouth. I'm hoping that we get. I didn't see on the. Trying to check here what the. So Dune Part Three confirmed in development. Cast may return. Da, 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 da. What is it? 2026? Okay, so we may have a couple of years. Which again, we don't exactly want them to rush now, do we? It's been so beautiful to this point that they're not going to screw it up now. So yeah, guys. But yeah, jump in on Rotten Tomatoes and tell folks how great this movie is, or others. But yeah, it was like 98%. Now it's down to 92. That seems silly, but I'm just glad it's doing well. I'm glad that a highly intelligent, beautifully written, high concept, high drama is doing as well as it is. There's fair amount of stuff going on now that's been produced over the past several years that really seems to be quite uh, um, patronizing, let's say, uh, that is not respecting the intelligence and sophistication of audiences. And I'm glad to see Dune Parts 1 and 2 because they are completely uh, in the opposite direction. They're respecting the art form, one, and respecting the intelligence of audiences like you and me. And it's just absolutely beautiful. So yeah, Dune Part Two, along with Part One, are streaming on Max, formerly HBO Max. Now, get into it, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.